Welcome back to the Cauldron of Curiosities, where we stir through the old tales that still whisper through the land. I'm Sarah, and today we're going underground, into the heart of Cornwall's tin mines to meet the knockers. Now, the knockers aren't creatures of shadowy moors or windswept cliffs. They're the spirits of the mines themselves. Some say they are mischievous, and some that they are supportive and helpful to the miners who used to go underground. What people do agree on is that they're not very tall and rather small in comparison to the average human being. But many people have created frightening tales around the knockers, but they've been part of Cornish folklore for centuries. The miners would say you could hear the knockers knocking deep in the tunnels, tap, tap, tap. At first it might sound like stone shifting or an echo from your own pickaxe. But then the rhythm comes, steady, insistent, as if unseen hands are working just a few feet away. So who are the knockers? Some people say the knockers are the ghosts of those who died in the mine, men swallowed by cave-ins, floods, or the poisoned air, and others believe the knockers are ancient spirits of the land, older than the mines themselves, who have simply claimed the tunnels as their homes. But if you think about it, the energy within the land may well represent inner spirit that you could recognise. But here is the curious part. For those of you who feel the knockers are quite scary, they haven't always been seen as being dangerous. In fact, many of the miners believed the knockers were protectors, and they said if you heard the knocking, it might be a warning to leave now, the rock is about to fall, or don't go further, danger lies ahead. In this way, the folklore carried a safety message. Respect the mine, respect the spirits, don't get greedy, and listen for the warnings. And when the miners emigrated to America, South Africa, Australia, and other places, South America included, they carried the knockers with them, and the stories travelled. In the gold mines of California, Cornish miners told of the Tommy knockers who played the same role of helpers, tricksters, and warnings in the dark. Of course, not everyone was believed. Some said the knockers were just the imagination of men who worked too long in the dark, or that the knocks were simply the groaning of the earth. But ask yourself, which is more powerful? To dismiss the sounds of geology, or to weave them into a story that keeps you alive? A story that reminds you never to turn your back on the dangers of the mine. Folklore isn't just fantasy. Sometimes it's survival, dressed up as a story. I had my own experience in Batalic, where there are tin mines by the sea, and I sat spending some time reflecting close to the edge of a cliff. And as I sat there the first time with just the dog, I heard a knocking sound, and it sounded like a pickaxe on rock, And I was quite surprised because I looked around and I couldn't actually see anyone, and there was no one walking about. And later the same day, we met up as a group by another mine where there were many souls lost in the past. And we were doing a particular journey and with our drums, and the knocking came again. But only a few of us could hear it. But it was interesting that this sound was there and the knockers joined what we were doing on the edge of a cliff. Maybe it was a warning not to go too close to the edge. I'm not sure about that. And what was interesting at the time, I was asked if I had spoken to them when I heard them, and I hadn't, because part of me was a little bit nervous to say hello. But you'll hear in the story that sometimes you can communicate if you are feeling a little bit bold. But just one word of warning: as Cornwall's tin mines stir up again in our time, maybe people will start to hear the knockers stirring up again too, not as a relic of superstition, but as guardians, reminding us to tread carefully, to respect the land, and to listen for the hidden warnings. So if you ever find yourself deep underground and you hear that tap, tap, tap echoing in the dark, don't be too quick to dismiss it. It might be the knockers helping you on your way. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Cauldron of Curiosities. Stay curious, and remember that sometimes the oldest tales carry the most practical wisdom. There is now a short story that was written about the knockers and a miner's experience meeting them. A tale about the knockers. One night I was working away for dear life, the sweat going over me like rain. I was in good heart because for every stroke of my tool I heard 3 or 4 clicks from the knockers, working away ahead of me. By the sound they seemed to be very near. After a few strokes, the ground crumbled down, loose and easy, and I found that I'd broken into a vug, which is a hollow space in a lode. My eyes were dazzled at first with the glistening of the bunches of crystals of all colours which hung down from the roof and the sides of the place, but when I rubbed my eyes and looked sharper into the inner end, there I spied 3 of the knockers. They were no bigger than a good 6-penny doll, yet in their faces, dress and movement, they had the look of hearty old miners. I took the most notice of the one in the middle. He was sitting down on a stone, his jacket off and his shirt sleeves rolled up. Between his knees he held a little anvil, no more than an inch square, and in his left hand he held a borer, a rod for drilling holes, about the size of a darning needle, which he was sharpening for one of the knockers while the other was waiting his turn to have his pick worked on. When the smith had finished the borer, he rested the end of his hammer on the anvil and looked towards me. "What cheer, comrade?" said he. "I couldn't think where the cold wind was coming from, and my light is blown out." "Oh, good morning, is that you, Harry?" said I, "and how is all the rest of the family?" "I'm brave and glad to see thee, and I'll fetch my candle in a wink." "You own is too small," says I, "for to stand the draught I've let into your shop. But I give you a pound of my candles, my dear, with all my heart I will, if you don't mind to have 'em." In less than no time I turned around again with my candle in hand. But what dost thou think? When I look again into the rug, there wasn't one of the knockers to be seen, nor their tools neither. All I heard was the sound of them somewhere in the miner head, tee-heeing and squeaking. Now, one of the things they say is that the miners often left a little of their lunch for the knockers. Sometimes the knockers became angry at the miners if no food was offered, or if the miners whistled or swore underground. Angry knockers might hide the miners' tools, tangle ropes, or break the ladders, which is not such a good thing, is it? Thank you for listening to this episode of the Cauldron of Curiosities. If you enjoyed this dip into folklore, don't forget to follow the podcast, share it with a friend, and keep your lantern handy for the next curious tale.